If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late-night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.
Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.
Radio.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is, it's some sort of day in November. It's a Wednesday.
Did you forget what day it was?
It's like the 19th. Or, well, you know, without Clint here to badger me on a regular basis.
I'll try.
I know. And I know you're going to give it your all, and I really appreciate that. But
you guys gotta see him. He has a long face. He's like, "Where's my partner?" I don't.
Yeah,
feel
it's
the same.
weird, right? Because not only do I have to just kind of do everything myself, as far as like show prep and everything, because you do your little engineering thing and you're just like running around like a silly bird. I don't even know what you do, to be honest with you. But you're over there doing your audio stuff, and I'm here like trying to show prep, and you know every once in a while, I'm like, hey, I should ask Clint if, oh, that's right, he's not here. Hey, Clint, do you want to, oh, yeah, that's right, you let me down again. So the good part is there's a good chance I won't be interrupted too much this evening, which is nice. Normally I have to deal with that. And I know when he's going to interrupt me because, well, he starts to look my way, and I usually get hit in the head with his nose as it comes around the corner. So... Wow. And I know he's listening.
I'm going to pull that clip and send it to him.
Oh, please do. Please. That's all I need. I'll never hear the end of it. No, Sackhead Clint is traveling this week, so he will not be joining us. I am joined by engineer extraordinaire, the one, the only, the hairiest engineer in all of radio.
Hey, no, I shaved.
Everything? Did you really?
I'll show you, but you might not like the sight.
Sackhead Sacco's out of the cage for the night. He's not all the way out of the cage. He's just not as in the cage as he normally is. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Your back, really? All right. You know, I do want to point out, Sean has upgraded today. He got rid of his sunglasses.
I did.
And now he has regular glasses that are appropriate for nighttime use. So,
well, you know, all the harassment I've received from you guys over the last couple months about my sunglasses, and it has to do with the time change. Because usually when we walk in the studio here, it's still sunny when the daylight saving times. So I come in with those, and I just keep them for the night. Now that it's dark when I arrive.
That's like dark at 5.
Right. I have to have my regular glasses on to see, so I drive with them, etc. So
do you know how sad that is, by the way? I mean, I wake up the crack of dawn.
Yeah.
I'm inside of a building all day. When I leave, it's sundown. Dark. I'm like, okay, so no sun for me, thanks.
You don't need it anyhow. You have that natural Mediterranean look.
Yeah.
Hey, how was your trip? Because you just went on a fun trip this weekend.
You know,
and this is youth at its finest, folks. While we're all toiling away and working, and
I
living
could
our life.
spend a half hour talking about this story.
Yeah, I'm not.
It was like The Hangover 4 for me. and usually, like, I don't want to over exaggerate. You know how, the first Hangover was like one of the best ones.
Yeah.
Number 2 is okay, and then as they go on, it kind of
They got worse, just like any other copy of a copy.
Number 4, so it's where number 4 should fall in line around that.
And you guys picked it up.
That's still like if it happens in real life, you're like, wow, that's pretty intense.
That's Vegas, baby.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I'm glad you guys had a good time, and you got to see a good friend of ours who we've known for a long time, who's serving in the Air Force, who's stationed out that way. So that's great. I'm glad you made it back safely. I won't get into the stories that I've heard so far, and we'll talk about that off the air.
I will say this. It got to a point where we lost one of our friends.
I've heard
on the Las Vegas Strip, and
to be young and stupid again. That's all I'm saying. To be young and stupid again. And the funniest part is most people don't realize is that you, for your age, and you're a younger guy, I get about 10, 12 years on you, I think, are extremely mature. But the crowd you run with is the exact opposite.
Right.
Very immature.
If I had friends that were 10 years older than me, I'd probably hang out with them.
You would fit in perfectly.
But because my age group is where it is, I have no choice. That's okay, though.
I'm glad you guys had a good time. You made it back safely. We'll get a lot coming up on the show tonight. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to everything, and we're going to try. I want to talk a little bit about the rape allegations against Bill Cosby that are coming out, and I also want to talk about Don Lemon being a moron that he is. We're going to cover some Keystone pipeline stuff at 8:30. Amazing authors, Scott and Judith Powell, will join us to discuss their book, Rebels. You've heard them on the Exceptional Conservative Show. They will be here with me this evening. We're going to get into immigration, which, by the way, tomorrow, 5 p.m. on the Pacific, 8 p.m. on the Eastern Time, the President will address the nation. We will have it here on the SHR Media Network, followed by analysis with the Exceptional One himself and Jason Miller, so make sure you tune in for that here. And we're going to get into immigration. There's a couple good videos that came out that we can discuss. I have audio from most of them. Talk about the Israeli attack, the impending Ferguson decision as to whether or not there will be an indictment handed down. And then kind of a feel-good story at the end has to do with the Boston Marathon bombing. So much to talk about this evening. I appreciate everyone who's joining us. If you are not in the chat room, you need to be. Get to shrmedia.com and click chat and jump right in the chat. Thank you so much to everyone who's in there right now. Mary, Brian, Egg, Holg, Iggy, Dan, RZ's in the chat, the Exceptional One himself, Jason Miller, Sackhead Sacco, me, a couple other people. So I really, really appreciate you you joining us this evening. So
finding someone that understands you is hard because you're human, and there's a lot of different humans out there. eHarmony helps you find someone you can be yourself with. You think no one would understand mourning a plant like it's a loved one, or singing made-up songs to your dog, but that's the type of person eHarmony helps you find. Someone who makes you feel seen, heard, and understood. Get started today on eHarmony. Get who gets you.
I know you don't pay attention to the news, and I think that's kind of funny, Sacco, that you work on a show that's based primarily on news and media. But you don't regularly.
I don't. What I do is I pick out key things on, let's say, Yahoo or just whatever website I'm browsing, and I see something that catches my eye. I'll browse through it, get the gist of it, and then that's it. And then I wait for you guys. Or if I don't want to read it, I'll just ask you guys, and you guys just know. Hey, Sean, so that Bill Cosby thing, what exactly happened? Oh, okay, cool. That's all I wanted to know.
Well, and I told you going into this tonight, I said there's so much news that's about to happen, and there's a ton of small stories that happened this week. You have the submarine off the coast of Australia, the Russian sub. The Russians are massing up against on the side of the Ukraine. Some people are saying there's going to be an impending invasion. I don't know. But in this country, it's funny kind of what we focus on when it comes to news. And mainstream media does a really, really, really good job of trying to make sure that you follow the stories they put in your face versus some of the bigger stories. Putin's meeting, the Australian Prime Minister was meeting with Putin in the meeting in Europe, and all of a sudden there's a potential nuclear sub off the coast of Australia with the escort group that goes with it. You barely hear a blip about it. in the news. Hardly anything. A couple things here and there, blah, 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 blah. The Russians are talking about flying bomber missions over the Gulf of Mexico to show their range. So they're having a meeting where Putin knows he's going to have a huge referendum put against him versus what happened in the Ukraine. He's going to flex his muscle, which the Russians do. We know the Russians do that. It's been something they've been doing for years. As soon as they get put on blast on something, they all of a sudden turn around and show their might.
Now,
somebody asked me to talk about a seal raping the penguin. I did not. I know a great joke about a mechanic and a seal, but that's neither here nor there in a penguin. But so that's kind of a big story, in my opinion, on the international basis. That's kind of a story that's out there that should pay attention to, because you have the G20 going on, you have all those meetings, and Russia's taken a beating, not to mention, like I said, what they're doing now in Ukraine, and they're doing that buildup. You have NATO saying that it's only a matter of time, possibly, before they invade Ukraine completely. We already know they're in Ukraine. So then you go to news across the world, and you get to America. What's one of the biggest stories out there right now? Bill Cosby.
Entertainment, pretty much.
And a rape allegation that occurred possibly 30 years ago. Now, I am not discounting these women's allegation. I wasn't there. You weren't there. If there's an investigation, that's fine. We all know that Bill Cosby's been critical of the president. He's been critical of Democrats. He's been critical of the African-American community as a whole. He's been very outspoken about that. It's not to say he's a staunch conservative or anything like that, but
he's intelligent. He knows his stuff, I would say.
Yeah, he's a pretty intelligent guy, and he has good opinions, but he has his own opinions.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like that on the left. And the other thing, too, is he's getting up there in age. I think he's close to 80, if he's not already 80, somewhere around that. And all of a sudden, these allegations come out. And then you have this Tarnish woman, and then the supermodel the other day making the allegations. So that goes to the front of the line. That gets pushed into the American people's face. That's the things that they want you to pay attention to that. Because coming up this week, we have Obama and immigration tomorrow. It's going to be done during all the primetime sweeps, and most of the big three news networks aren't going to cover it because it's going to aggravate people, and they know that. Ferguson's coming Friday. The only thing they want you to know out of Ferguson is what they feed to you. There's lists right now apparently being handed out in Ferguson as to where to quote-unquote protest.
Where to protest?
If the indictment comes down that the police officer is not indicted on anything, or the grand jury comes back that the police officer is not indicted by anything. And it's weird because they want you to protest power stations, blah, 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 blah. But yet...
Oh, who's giving out these
protest
protest
and I'll
areas?
get to that when I get to Ferguson later in the show. But I'm just talking about how mainstream media pushes the agenda they want. And all of a sudden, here comes Bill Cosby and rape allegations.
He came out of nowhere. I'm not
it is. It's out of left field. But again, it's a good person for mainstream media to tear down because of his outspoken... and he's a very famous person, and he's been outspoken about the things he has been. So they're going to chew on this. And again, I don't know whether it happened or it didn't happen. It could have very well been consensual back then. It could have very well been a complete lie or whatever. But Ms. Tarnish, one of the alleged victims, decided that she was going to go on CNN with Don Lemon. And it's clip 0. And Don Lemon... And give me 1 second. Don Lemon decided that he was going to try to investigate. This is the most bizarre, in my opinion, one of the most bizarre line of questioning that you could have to a potential rape victim. First of all, the fact that she's all over the news media right away just sounds bizarre to me. That's just me. But then she goes on to Don Lemon, and listen to this. And I'm not laughing at what potentially could have happened. I'm laughing at what a moron Don Lemon is. Go.
Can I ask you this? Because and please, I don't mean to be crude, okay?
Yeah.
Because I know some of you, and you said this last night, that you lied to him and said, I have an infection, and if you rape me, or if you have intercourse with me, then you will probably get it and give it to your wife. And
Right.
you said he made you perform oral sex.
Right.
You know, there are ways not to perform oral sex if you
Oh.
want to do it.
I was kind of stoned at the time, and quite honestly, that didn't even enter my mind.
Yeah.
Now I wish it would have,
Right.
but
Meaning the using of the teeth, right?
mhm, yes,
to-
that's what I'm
as a
thinking.
weapon,
You're,
is what
yeah,
I'm
I
saying.
didn't even think of it.
Biting. So.
Ouch.
Yes. I had to ask. I mean,
Yes,
it
no,
is-
I didn't. It didn't.
Now, all right, I understand that this is
Well, I was
well,
stoned.
right. There's two
Wait,
things that come out of
okay.
this. First of all, you have the victim alleging that she was stoned when it happened. I don't know where she alleged this happened, and I don't know the law in that particular state, so I don't know whether or not they've passed the ability to prosecute him. I'm not even going to get into that. But you have her admitting that she was stoned when it happened. She was too stoned to kind of be able to think her way out of it, but not stoned enough to say that I have an infection, so if you have regular intercourse with me. So that is that portion of it. But let's listen to Don Lemon. No, I don't want to play it again. Sucko, please don't play it again. Having a
funny, man.
Shawshank Redemption memory, the scene in Shawshank Redemption where he's caught into the laundry room with the three guys, and trying to explain to her or bring up the fact that, hey, you could have almost, I
Could've
hate to
just
say,
bit it, like
right. I hate to say it, he's like trying to allege, but really? You're just going to suggest that maybe she should have bit it off? First of all, if she is truly a victim, the last thing a victim wants to hear is how they could have not been a victim, especially when it comes to sexual abuse. But this idiot, and Don Lemon is an idiot, ladies and gentlemen. And it's not just this one interview that sums that up. He was also the guy who, when the police were moving Ferguson, all the reporters, and one of the individuals said, hey, one of the cops said to the reporters, you need to back up. Don Lemon took almost like a soccer fall, and the officer's hand brushed him. He's like, hey, you guys need to back up. This is unsafe, whatever.
Are you serious?
Yes.
We gotta find this video.
And he
and
almost
post it.
did. He almost did like a soccer ditch. Like it was the biggest, and they're all like, "Oh goodness gracious, this is the." Oh, he pretty much assaulted me, and CNN played that for like a week.
First one,
just to
first one who
show-
finds that clip gets a shout out.
Yes.
Go.
And on top of a million other things, I think Don Lemon was the king of the AR-15 shotgun. He brought that up, which is a weapon that doesn't exist, et cetera, et cetera. So that shows you the intelligence.
It's like if I was out there talking on a news station.
Yes,
I would
exactly.
have
You would have no clue.
I heard something about this AR-15 shotgun. That sounds reasonable, yeah.
And he reported on it like it was fact. CNN keeps putting Don Lemon on things like this, and he is just a moron. I remember Don Lemon, there was a gas leak in the Bronx or something like that, this horrendous fire and gas leak, et cetera, et cetera. And Don Lemon's trying to work his way into the crime scene while firefighters are passing him on the way out because the fumes were getting so bad. And one of them said, hey, man, you may want to back up. And he was essentially saying, you can't tell me what to do. I'm the press. And 2 minutes later, there's a video of him kind of running back out choking. That shows you just what a moron this Don Lemon guy is. But he's a talking head. But my point to all of this is that the mainstream media, once again, starts throwing stuff in your face on the eve of two major news stories that are coming out to focus on. The average person, and I hate to say this is what bothers me in this country, the average person probably knows more about the alleged rape that happened with Cosby than they do about the Keystone pipeline decision from yesterday, the potential of what Obama could do on immigration tomorrow, and the Ferguson indictment. People know more about this than those three things, and that's sad to me. And it's sad that we got to that point in this country. It truly is.
Well, that's why.
And then you have an a-hole like Don Lemon who's going to bring up and just tell this woman what she did wrong while she was allegedly being raped. I mean, that to me,
It's like, you know how you get into a fight, or you see someone get into a fight, one of your friends, you're like, bro, I would have just done this instead. You know, I would have done a roundhouse kick about this point. Okay, buddy, yeah.
Yeah, whatever there, Smokey. Good job.
I would have just bit it off.
Oh,
Well,
man. So,
I don't know.
moving on.
What's your opinion? Do you think Bill Cosby actually did something?
I have no idea. I wasn't there. This is one of those things where he's already lost in the court of public opinion. People have already said, oh, he probably did it. He probably did. There's no evidence to support it publicly. There may be private evidence. There's no public evidence.
Mm-hmm.
I can't make a decision on that.
Well,
I don't.
based
I
on character
personally,
and
from what I know of Bill Cosby, I don't think he's a sexual predator.
Right.
One of the things that I brought up while discussing this with somebody is I think he's getting old. He has a lot of money to be made from these people making these allegations, because if there's no criminal, there's going to be a civil lawsuit. And if he dies before they get to that point, they may not be able to get to it. So, there could very well be finances involved. The absolute flip side of that is, hey, maybe he was a monster in the 70s. I wasn't there. I don't know. And I'm not going to pretend to know. I'm not going to make any sort of decision one way or the other. But it was 30 or 40 years ago. Why is it coming out now? I always have a question with stuff like that. Even if it came out 20 years ago.
Well, it would have been more appropriate 20 years ago.
It would have been more appropriate 40 years ago or 30 years ago. So I don't know. Ag is reminding me that Bill Cosby did have a degree in physical education. That is very true. I don't know if that was actually the physical education that he... either way, it's not important. The point is, I don't know. And if it did happen, then yeah, I feel bad for these women, but I also don't understand why coming out with it now.
Yeah.
I always question stuff like that. But again,
I get if you act out of fear, but...
Right. I my gut feeling tells me that there's more to this story. And the other possibility is, hey, you know what? Maybe he just had affairs with these women, and now they're trying to turn around and I don't know. I wasn't there. He doesn't strike me as the type of guy to do that.
Yeah, but if you're
again,
in
that's opinion
entertainment
based on what I know of him.
Okay, well, first, if he's hanging out with this woman that's getting stoned, he was probably getting stoned around that time too.
There's a good chance he was,
and probably was consensual.
Have you seen Fat Albert?
I have, yeah.
Maybe he was playing Dr. Huxtable with her. Playing doctor with her. I don't know, but it's just a bizarre story to me. It's very bizarre, and the timing hit. It's almost like, wow, Iggy spelled Mary spelled Dr. Huxtable right. I wouldn't have got that right to save my life, but it's almost like there was somebody called him and said, "Hey, we need a story, and we know you've come to us maybe 5 or 6 times trying to make this allegation. Will you mind coming on now and talk about it?" Like, it's just really weird. But I got to move on. I'm not going to spend all night on that. My point of the story is, A, Don Lemon is a moron, and B, what the media will push to the front in order to shove the narrative that they want down people's throats. Don't make any correlation between that statement and the Cosby thing, please. But I'm just saying.
And what was the first one again?
That Don Lemon's an idiot.
Oh, okay, yeah, go ahead.
I may have said moron. I don't know. Number 2, real quick, and we do have the Powells coming up at 8:30, so I'm not going to go long because we got to get them on the line. The Keystone pipeline, and by the way, if you have a chance, listen to Reaver Common Sense on the SHR Media. He just did a show this past weekend about it. But despite her being in a horrible situation, Mary Leandro down Louisiana, she's about to run into a runoff. She kind of needed a win going into this. She's pretty much the only Democrat that was 100% for it. But the Keystone Pipeline, it went away for a long time. And then amazingly, all of a sudden it shows up in the Senate just after an election, which is kind of strange, but whatever. It's total political gain that this is brought up now. But you have the pipeline that's running from Canada down to Louisiana, bringing oil. Could have brought a ton of jobs, a ton of money.
What happened?
Environmental groups and political gain from the Democrats. But the only Democrat who really wanted it was Mary Leandrew, because it really would have helped out her district in Louisiana. It would have added a ton of jobs down there, permanent jobs, not just the build-up and the monitor of the pipe, but down there once the oil gets out of the pipe where it's refined, shipped, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the Democrats refused to pass it.
The Democrats refused to pass it. And
Yes.
What?
Going back in the chat room, this is why Ken in the chat room, Don Lemon will be appearing in a bathroom near you. I think that's probably already happened. Iggy is defending the cause, saying that he wasn't anywhere near that hoe, and Ken would like to add that Don Lemon was in fact near that hoe. So, that's all the important stuff that comes out of our chat room during the course of the show. But Mary Leandrew, and listen, she doesn't care about the people down there getting their jobs in the Keystone Pipeline. She cares about her getting reelected in this runoff coming up. And she lost. And this is going to be, people are projecting that it's going to be a landslide against her anyhow on this election coming up here in December. But this is going to make it even worse. And the Democrats, and again, folks, remember, the Democrats are very, very good about putting themselves on record and being morons about it. They put it on record that they do not want the Keystone Pipeline. They sided with the environmentalists. Environmentalists had such insane arguments. My favorite one is, if you build this pipeline, I swear to God, I read an article from an environmentalist that was writing like this whole article about it, and the gist of it was, if you build this pipeline, people are just going to use gasoline like crazy and kill the environment. That was it. People are going to use gas anyhow. Folks,
Yeah.
this environmental thing, when it comes to gas, and by the way, ask the people in Buffalo, New York right now about global warming, and they'll have a conversation with you. But the amount of gas that people use is not dependent on how much we produce. It's very, very dependent on the need for it.
Right.
I think everyone will agree that if they come out with an alternative to gas that is cost-effective, cheap, and readily available, people would go to it tomorrow. And not because they're environmentalists, but for those of us who are capitalists and worry about our finances and stuff like that, would take the cheapest way out.
Yeah.
It's supply and demand. That's capitalism, baby. That's capitalism 101. But when you turn around and you try to argue that people using more gas is the only direct result of this pipeline, you are ending the argument of the good things that would come out of it. People having more jobs. Gasoline prices being lower, meaning people can afford to travel further for work. There's a lot of people, when gas prices are through the roof, who maybe won't do that job 85 miles away, because what that job pays versus the amount of gas it will spend to get there, it doesn't pay off. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Gas prices go down. Those people may be able to travel further for work and commute, and now all of a sudden they're back to work, paying taxes. They're employed, which is a problem we kind of have in this country right now, is unemployment, and they're happy. People don't, as much as insane environmentalists would like to convince everybody, people don't just buy 55 gallons of gas and then just do donuts until the gas tank runs out. It doesn't happen that way. We buy gas because we need it. We buy gas because it's a part of our life. You guys, you want to end the Keystone Pipeline argument? Find a better, cheaper alternative that is readily available and just as effective, and I will be the first one to stand in line and buy that product. Hey, we're up against a break. When we come back, Scott and Judith Powell will join us. They will be discussing their new book, Rebel, as well as their other books. I want to talk a little bit about their history. If you haven't had a chance, at this break, go to shrmedia.com. There's a great article that they wrote, kind of a clip of their book and a little bit of their background, and you can follow along with that while you listen to the show. Back in 3.5 here on the Sackheads Radio Show.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Sack news. Fact is.
Radio.
Fact is. Fact is.
Radio.
The best late night conservative talk show in America. In America.
In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
Is radio.
Fact is. Fact is.
Radio.
Fact is. Fact is.
Radio.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hey, and welcome back into the Sackheads Radio Show. We did cut it a little bit short on our break because we didn't want to waste any time getting Scott and Judith Powell on with us. Scott and Judith, are you there?
I'm here. Scott's coming.
Hey, how are you?
We're good. How are you? Can you hear us good?
Absolutely, hear you just fine. I thank you so much for joining us this evening. You guys have a really cool story. First of all, how you just started writing is kind of a neat story, and then. You wrote this 3-part series, the John Bates series, Rebels, Rebellion, Revolution. And when you're ready, I'd like you to first explain how you guys got into writing. And then I want to cover a little bit of the book. Okay.
It was 2008, and I started to kind of start taking myself seriously as a writer. I've been I'm a stay-at-home mom, we homeschool. I thought I'm going to spend some time working on myself and working on my brain. So I'm going to start writing every day. And so I was writing every day for a while, and then in the fall of 2008, Scott lost his job. And he comes home from work, and he's like, honey, I've lost my job. And so I start to kind of take all the papers off my desk. As you can imagine, my computer desk, I had back research stuff on there and all kinds of just notes and stuff all over the computer. And I start kind of clean it up because I'm thinking I have to make way for him to look for a job. And he's going to need his computer, and I have to move out of the way. The book's going to have to go on hold. And he looked at me in that moment and he said, is this the one? And I was like, the one? He goes, yeah, is this the one book you're going to finish? Is this going to be the one? And I said, yes, I'm going to finish this book. It's going to be a great book. And he said, then finish it. And
wow.
I told him, oh, go ahead.
No, I think that's kind of amazing because I just think of my situation. If I was in that situation, I'd be like, honey, you got to move. I got to look for Craigslist. I got to be digging a ditch by tomorrow. Like, I got to be doing something because, it shows the faith that he had in you and your ability. But please go on.
It was really cool. So I start writing every day, and at the time we had made a plan that if we were employed, that I could make bread. That we would, I was still homeschooling, and we would scrimp and say we wouldn't buy out anything, we wouldn't eat any fast food or anything like that. We'd make everything. And so I'm making all this stuff and doing the laundry and taking care of kids for homeschool. And he's like, "How much are you writing a day?" I'm like, "Well, I'm writing like 10 pages a week." And he said to me, "We're going to be employed forever if you're going to write 10 pages a week. You need to write 10. You have to write." You need to write 10 pages a day. And I said, "Well, I can't do that and make bread." And he said, "Teach me how to make bread, and you write, and I'll make bread, and I'll do the homeschooling for the kids." And so we kind of switched jobs for a little bit, and I did all the writing, and I got all the way done. And when I got all the whole book finished, written, I gave it to him, and he did all the editing. At the end of the time, when he was all the way through all the editing and going over it the first time, we had like $1,000 left in our savings, and I said to him, "Now you can have a job." 1 hour later, Sean, he had a call for a job.
No kidding.
It was a miracle.
Well, and I was going to say, you want to talk about miracles and divine intervention. That's pretty outstanding.
It was a real miracle, and we had this book, but it wasn't really complete. And at the time, I was trying to convince Scott to help me write it, to kind of add in, especially the fighting scenes. He's a mixed martial artist. And I was like, if you could just write the fighting scenes, it'd be so much better. And I was constantly begging him. And it was when we sent our new book. It was when I sent it's our newest published book, but it was written first, Last Enchantress, out to agents and different people. And they said, "Look, it's great, but you need a new beginning." And I was like, I didn't know how to cut those 10 pages off. It just felt like, I know the article he wrote, Scott reminded me, I told him, I felt like I'm cutting off my own arm. I don't know how I'm going to do this and rewrite 10 pages. And he goes, "I know what to do." And he took over. So he was really cool. And then when he started doing the 10 pages, go ahead.
I think it's hard, too, and I'm not going to pretend to be an author, but even writing articles on our website, and I've written some articles on some other websites, when you get that back from the person editing and, you put your heart and soul in, you have a plan when you go into writing most things, and you have your points that you try to get in, etc. And when somebody comes back to you and says, "Hey, this is great, but in my case, the first paragraph, or your case, the first 10 pages has to go," it's kind of a shot in the gut. And I don't think people realize that. They look at it like, it's 300 pages. What's the first 10? But you put all that work in to make sure that those first 10 kind of set up the rest.
Yeah. And you don't really know what to do. You have to almost begin again and start again. And so Scott took over because I know what to do. We had gotten done just recently up to this point was he had written a series of letters to people in authority that wouldn't act on something, but did because his letters persuaded them. I'm like, "You're a great writer. You're a great persuasive writer. You need to really help me write this book." And so he went in and he wrote my whole new beginning at the first of The Last Enchantress. And then he went in with me and I said, "You keep going through it. Go through the whole thing." And he just kind of put details and things. It was almost like he could see what I could see. It was really amazing because he saw what I saw. If you asked me to take something like Stephanie Meyer's or Rawlings' book and kind of write in between what they wrote and write my own stuff in it, it would be a totally different book. I don't think it would be anything they envisioned. But with Scott and it works perfectly. I go through and write, and then he goes back in and just puts in all the details and does a really great job. And it works really well together, and we can take turns writing, and so we get done a little bit faster that way, I think, too.
Well, and you described it perfectly in the article you wrote for us. you kind of do the framework, and he comes in and does the interior decoration. Which not a lot of MMA guys do interior decoration really well. So I think that's impressive that he can come in and take care of that. But I think it's an amazing symbiotic relationship, and it goes to any partner you work with, and obviously with you guys, you're well beyond work partners. You're married and kids, and you guys are in love, but you get that symbiotic relationship with some people that you work with, where it's that finishing of each other's sentences, and in this situation, it was the book.
Yeah, it was really that. It was exactly like that, and it was incredible to me because the book became a better book. It grew from there, and it was like it was meant to always work like that. And we turned around and we have Everybody Has Rebels. I had written a book at the time. We just called it A Change of Heart, and I just written it, and it was really kind of basic. And then Scott got in there and took it, and he made it the John Bates series, and which is Rebels, Rebellion, and Revolution. And he took that and ran with that really well. And I think for boys and especially libertarians, Rebel series is really awesome. Last Enchantress is cool too. But it's more symbolic. It's more like Wizard of Oz symbolism. Why Rebels, Rebellion, and Revolution is more in your face of, it's important to have. So it's kind of, we decided we're just going to put the stuff out that you need to do in order to be free. Whether it was the book is really as a lot of pro firearms, pro food storage, pro life. I mean, the whole series is kind of.
Well, and it's very pro-patriotic as well. Now, kind of walk us through, introduce the books a little bit. Tell us kind of the basis for it and the build-up. And obviously, you don't want to give too much away because we want people to go read the book, and you can get the links to the book on SHR Media right now. But kind of set it up and give us a little tease, if you will.
Okay. Scott's telling me I have to do all the talking.
That's not true. I heard him cough once, and anytime he wants to jump in and say hi, he's more than welcome to.
I'm really shy, Sean. I am an interior designer kind of type of guy.
Come on, dude.
He's calling me out.
I didn't want to correct you the fact that it's not global warming anymore. It's climate change and the natural weather that took up. Well, I'm from Vermont, actually, originally born and raised there, so that snow up in Buffalo, New York is normal. No one needs to worry about it.
No,
the economy's good. Immigration will be worked out tomorrow. Tomorrow night we're going to find out how we're going to be fixing our immigration. I'm glad to hear about that. So
everything's going to be fine by Saturday.
Keystone, I need that. We should go off natural energy. I agree with you. Absolutely.
Yeah, he's definitely shy, Judith. I can see what you mean by that. And he also doesn't have a funny sense of humor either. I can't imagine. It must be really dry in the house when you guys are writing. So tell us a little bit about the series.
Okay. Okay. So with Rebels, it takes place. We debate about how far in the future it is. Like 20 to 30 years in the future from right now. The economy collapsed. The world economy totally collapsed, and there was rioting in the streets. America stands up and says, hey, we'll take care of you, but you have to surrender to us. And so pretty much the world falls in line behind America, and basically America is almost like America succeeds where Hitler failed. It finally takes over the world, pretty much. Maybe a few little tiny exclusions. But pretty much America has taken over. Well, John has grown up his whole life with an America that's a whole worldwide America. And it's not libertarian and it's not free. It's very much a dictatorship. And so he's living like that when he's in what the early military, because that's where all the stuff is. If you're in the military, you're in the enforcement of the state, you get better stuff. And he's in this group that his dad wants him to be in because he gets to work with firearms and he gets to work with self-defense. When it's discovered that he has a bad heart. And he's chosen out above hundreds of other people who need heart surgery that he's going to get his heart because he's important to the state. And so it kind of goes from there.
Yeah, Sean, the story, what it does is it basically shows that this young man where the state makes a mistake. They see his physical talent and his capacity, but they don't realize what's really being taught in his house. In other words, during this time, the Constitution is outlawed. If you were to be found with a copy of the Constitution or with a Bible and teaching what they consider propaganda during that time, we consider truth, you could be executed for doing that, and you'd be considered a traitor. And as the series goes on, you'll find that John will rebel against what the state wanted him to do. In other words, to enforce their laws and their propaganda, and that he ends up becoming a fugitive, and that they come after him while John is figuring out how to escape and how to continue to protect his family and those he loves, and to fight for what he knows to be this great nation's rights. And we wrote it. It's obviously it's got some science fiction in it. I mean, there's some enhancements to him physically that makes it more entertaining. The idea underlying in the story is to push the idea that we need to stand in that. We want the youth in particular, because we have a lot of them coming in 2016. They'll be able to vote, and they'll be able to make decisions that help this nation to go in the right direction. I mean, it's sad to say that today's world we live in, we're allowing it, like my dad says, one slice at a time, to be taken away from us and become a welfare state, because we're basically coming at that point where 50% of the American people, whether they like it or not, they're on some sort of federal or state assistance.
Yep.
Unemployment, as you and I know, is definitely at 5.8%. It's the best it's been since 2008 or whatever they lied about. And in the book itself is reinforcing, if you were to stay where we're at today, that we're going to be heading to that direction, whether it's an economic collapse, whether we have some sort of, non-Ebola scare, because that's under control. We know that as well.
Yeah, we're safe.
We're actually safe, And the irony
just
of it all,
keep calm. Everything's fine.
Yeah, wear a mask, a couple gloves, get some duct tape. You should be all good, right? And never mind the incubation period. We have a nurse up north. She knows better than we do. It's okay to go outside, bike ride, and But the idea is with the book series is to waken people up to realize we have a choice and we can change this, and we don't have to go through these consequences. Now, do I believe we've gone to a point where there's going to be some suffering? Yeah. When I was laid off back in 2008, September, at the end of that month, that day when I was laid off, the stock market was dropped 800 points.
Yep.
And people don't realize the stock market right now is inflated. It's not real. It's not being backed by anything realistically. It's
right. Well, that's where you start talking about the gold standard, the silver standard, or the imaginary money that we play with.
Yes, exactly. And I talked to my dad. I said, it starts back in Nixon when they took away that gold standard. All these things, and prior to even that, when we took away the Bible from within the schools, when we started Social Security, and over time we've done food stamps, unemployment, we've done obviously Medicaid. There's a lot of things people feel they're entitled to, and I'm going to tell you, the Rebel series is many people say, well, it's just a book. Well, it's a book that tells a story that what's going to happen. And the fact is that you may not pay the price, but our children's children will pay the price. And how many countless lives we lost because, thanks to Obamacare, you and I will have the best future ever. As long as as long as your life points are worth something, of course, we can't say there's putting a value on people's lives. Let's look at the VA hospitals.
They do that all the time.
And so a lot of the book series goes in involving concerns of welfare, goes into the Obamacare, goes into how the economy goes into disease and how people will suffer needlessly, and there's no reason to. And we just want to kind of help America remember how great we are, but we need to make that change. We can't count on people in office to make those changes for us. We have to make those changes.
Well, and we talk a lot about the show, too, how, like you said, kids are being raised to believe that government is everything and that they give you everything you need, and all you have to do is just smile, wave, and just kind of keep going. We've lost our exceptionalism as a nation. Not all of us, but a large percentage, more and more every single day. I'm sure, I don't know if your kids play with other kids, but, you interact with other people who are part of that mentality of, hey, you know what, it doesn't matter. What do you mean you have to pay a cell phone bill? I got an Obama phone. I can call whoever I want. I don't know what I literally heard, I don't know what the big deal is about Obamacare. I've been getting free health care from the state pretty much my whole entire life. Like, we have been raised to believe that everything, we're like cattle, and as soon as the hay starts getting thrown around, we just kind of show up and eat. And then once the hay's gone, we go back and do nothing all day until the next day when the hay comes again. And eventually, we're going to be turned into prime rib. Tasty, tasty, tasty prime rib. And that's something I agree with you. I kind of laughed a little bit earlier when Judith said, it said about 30 years in the future. And then as you really get into telling the story, I'm like, maybe not 30. You guys might be a little bit closer than that.
My argument's 15. He's like, it's not 15. I'm like, that's 15.
Well, Sean, you may be ready for the slaughter earlier. I mean, that's not my fault. You might be a nice, tasty rib sooner than others, but I appreciate you taking one for the team, by the way, if you're doing that.
I will not. I'm not saying me. I'm not saying me. Trust me. I am built for that right now at this point in my life, but that's not my plan. I will go down fighting if I need to. A couple people.
My dad's generation is going to go first. I thank him foremost for getting us to this point. I tell him with the baby boomer generation, thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. It was wonderful what they've left to us, isn't it? I mean, that is just heavenly. They've done such a great job of really setting us up. Yes, please. And I know we have a couple quote-unquote baby boomers who weren't involved in that, but no, it's a scary time. And when you read your book and you really start to go through it, you start seeing similarities in today's nation. And I always have a problem, and not because there's something wrong with it, but it always kind of scares me a little bit when you have a book that, like you said, 30 years in the future and a little bit of science fiction, but as you're reading through, you're like, yeah, that's kind of real. Okay, and that's kind of real. Yeah, that's kind of real too. I think I'm going to finish this crying under the bed. Because if you really are, if you really kind of pay attention, how did you know? It's slowly but surely. We've said right along, it will never be an outright grasp. We will never, I said it before and I'll say it again, nobody will ever stand up in the White House and declare themselves emperor because, we talked about this last week, the country would go insane at that point. It's too in your face. So they kind of take the Cass Sunstein approach where everything's a nudge. They chip away at this, they chip away at that. Sometimes they use shame to get you away from, for Christianity and the Christianity belief. They use shame for everything that they try to push. Oh, if you're not for Obamacare, then you want people to die. Oh, if you're not for amnesty, then you must think that all illegals are horrible individuals, blah, 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 blah. They constantly do that shame and nudge where they work on your emotions and they take away the literal argument. They don't want to have that literal argument, the progressives and the left don't, because that you can contest what they're saying. But they know if they win people's emotional response, if they get that out there, then people, well, yeah, of course I think that, John's a good guy and I know he's here illegally, but, if he's okay, the rest of them are as well. They do that to you. So it will never be one fell swoop. It'll never just be taken because this country wouldn't stand for it, but they will continue to knock it away piece by piece by piece. And then 30 years in the future, we could be looking at the John Bates series in real life.
Well, what's interesting about it, Sean, is that the biggest thing is about it started in education, where they've limited the truth to be taught to kids today, as well as media. I'm not saying yourself, obviously, but general media is not sharing the truth. We know a lot about the Kardashians. We know what's going on with Bill Cosby. I heard you talk about that earlier before you came on. All the non-essentials. I'm not saying there's not some things worthwhile knowing, but generally speaking, we're not hearing about Benghazi or the Fast and Furious. Most people weren't even aware of the Marine that was stuck in Mexico for almost 7 months. Things that are very vital that what make up America today. We're busy worrying about, I'm Roll Tide. I'm from Alabama. They're number one in the nation, but that's not my first concern.
Right.
It concerns me when we're talking to people and saying, where's this money come from to paying all these programs? They go, look, I don't really worry about that as long as I qualify for it. And
right.
To give an example, some time ago, when we got hit with a hurricane down here in Birmingham area, one of my employees, she was in the designated area where FEMA was, and she asked me, she says, can I leave work early today? I says, why? She says, well, they're giving out free food stamps. I says, were you hit and affected? She says, no, but I'm in that area where we can get it anyways. And there's no type of attitude of Go ahead.
I and I'm from the Northeast, and back in, I want to say it was 2001, 2002, we had some pretty severe flooding in northern Massachusetts, where FEMA came in, and it may have actually been just before Katrina, and they declare, okay, this place is a state of emergency. If you live in this place, you can go to FEMA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I happened to across a ton of people who suffered no damage whatsoever, but they were getting their FEMA bucks because the line's there. I might as well jump in it and get it, And that exact situation happens, and that happens with welfare too. And I talked about this a couple of weeks ago where, the people who really need it don't get it, and the same thing with disability, and the same thing can be said with some veterans benefits too, is there are people that take it that don't necessarily need it, and I don't mean veterans in general. I mean money that we could be putting into the VA and taking care of our vets that we're using for people who are scamming the system.
You're saying people on disability, they shouldn't be on it? Is that your suggestion?
I know, right? I'm some kind of monster to suggest that somebody may be screwing the system here and there. And you know as well as I do.
Their injuries? I hope not.
That would be horrible. How would that even happen? And I just read a story not too long ago about a woman who, and this sums up the system in a lot of places, a woman was arrested because she went into a job interview and left two children in a car by themselves, very young. I think they were 1 and 3 in the middle of the summer. And she was arrested for child endangerment. Somebody started a fund for her, and this was out in California, that totaled, the fund ended up coming in, I think it was $59,000 that they raised for this woman to take care of her kids, try to get her back on her feet. The community came together and said, yeah, you know what, you shouldn't have left the kids in the car, but you have a sad story. You were trying to do the right thing. Let's see if we can help make this right. All $59,000, they did it, somebody did an investigation, was spent on jeans for her, clothes for her, Gucci handbags. Not one thing went to where it was supposed to go. And that was that wasn't the government just giving you free stuff. That was people who opened up their own pocketbooks and said, hey, you know what, we want to help you out. That was what the good of the country is, and what I believe this country still has is the good of the people who are willing to help each other out because we want to, not because we're forced to. And this person would still do that without thinking twice about it. And so, of course, when it comes to the government system and there's no checks and balances, they're absolutely going to run right all over it. I told a story last week about a friend of mine who worked in a welfare office, and literally the woman at the counter was a cousin to the person applying and was telling her what to put down to get more money for her welfare. The system is completely broken, and it's only getting worse. And the more people accept that the system is okay this way and take that handout, and the government's essentially paying them to be complacent against the very thing they're taking part of.
Yeah, but they forget who's paying for it. That's what blows my mind. They think it's like some kind of magic machine that's printing money for them.
Oh, yeah, no. They show. Haven't you ever seen the pictures of the Mint when it's producing all that money? It's free, baby. It just keeps coming.
Jefferson said a government that can give you anything can take everything away from you.
Yes.
And the more as a society, as America, that we're bought into a government that gives us literally everything and it takes care of, really, even with Obamacare, you think if you're talking against them, and if everybody's on Obamacare and they decide, oh, well, your life points just went down. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what's funny is how many people buy into the, what was the books there that they turn into movies as well, like the Hunger Games type thing?
Yeah.
And people are like, yay, this book is awesome. I'm like, do you realize that's not an exaggeration either of what the future could hold? Like, the possibilities are there as well. Like, you shouldn't be happy about this. It should be a sad warning, but people don't look around and realize that a lot of the things, and, I go back to Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged, which
right.
The same thing, like people didn't pay attention. Look where we are now. A lot of the things that she wrote way back, what it was, 55 years ago now, 58 years ago, whatever it is, are starting to show up now. because we don't heed the warnings, and we don't pay attention to the past. We don't pay attention to other people's history. We just focus, oh, it's America. This would never happen here. Well, the ideas that are being utilized right now have been implemented in other places, and they learned why they failed, and it's very possible for them to be applied here. We talk about it all the time. Hitler's propaganda was taken directly from Bernays, who was the propaganda for Wilson. Yeah. And it was cut and dry. I mean, there was no, if you read all the propaganda outline for that was put together, I want to say Goebbels, but I'm wrong, but for Hitler, it was exactly Bernays' book for Wilson. So they get recycled, and then more and more they get kind of cleaned up, and we couldn't sell this, so we have to kind of change how we sell it and change where we go to make people more accepting of it. Cass Sunstein's book is a humongous nudge, is a humongous look into what the progressive left does to get this country to swallow things that are otherwise atrocious.
Well, that's with Rebels. That's one thing we did pull from. We pulled from Hitler, we pulled from communism, and we pulled from even the Dark Ages. And we pulled really what we thought an ultimate totalitarian society would look like for America. Mm-hmm. We pulled from all those places with the idea that they even use religion as a way to hold you down. Yes. In the Dark Ages, nobody had a Bible. You couldn't read the Bible. You had to be told what it said. And it was very much a propaganda, hey, the church is in power and the church is in charge. And that wasn't a Christian thing. I think a lot of times Christians get blamed for that. No, that was a power thing or a government thing. The government wanted power. It was the church at the time. The people wanted power, and they used faith, people's faith in God, as like a weapon against them. And we put that into Rebels to say, hey, don't let people, it's one thing that drives me crazy living in the South, and we love living here, but people don't read their Bible. They don't read their Constitution. They don't know what it says, but they're going around spouting what other people say. And it's great to have a minister that tells you what the interpretations of. It's good to have that, but it's better for you to also be reading it. You can't just let someone else tell you what it says.
Well, and I agree with you, and the same thing goes with the Constitution. And when you go to the Constitution, you don't just read the Constitution. Read all the documents by the founding fathers that wrote it going up to the Constitution, why they wrote certain things and how they wrote certain ways. And really their basis for why it's up until now the most successful governing document that's ever been produced in the history of the world. And I will say that with 100% confidence. Yes, it's being perverted now, and we can have that conversation. But as it stood originally, it was a bulletproof governing document that gave power to the people, and that the government would be responsible to the people and not the other way around. And we have since allowed it to become perverted, where government is in control and the people are just the peasants, if you will. And people are okay with that, and it's sad. And if you go back and you read the founding documents, it will show you that this is not how we were intended. George Washington warned us about the two-party system adamantly. And this was a guy that we had to beg to be president. Because he knew better. It wasn't what he wanted, but he did it because the country called on him to do it, not because he wanted to be a powerful politician. And that history is just lost. And you look at you Scott brought up education earlier. I always bring up 9/11 now. You look at 9/11 and how it's being taught in classrooms today. They're pulling out the Muslim extremist part, and they just put extremists. They're removing the names of the individuals. They're taught that they were upset at America. They kind of blame, in some texts, they're kind of blaming the United States for being attacked. The true history of 9/11 is not being taught. What happened before, what happened afterwards, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a country who thought Al-Qaeda popped up on 9/11 and never existed a day before. And now they're apparently on the run, even though they keep attacking us somehow, which is the most amazing. If they were a quarterback...
They've been put off, Sean. They no longer exist.
Well, I was going to say, if they were a quarterback, they'd be the best scramblers ever. It'd still have a high completion rate.
CNN, all the accurate news stations that tell us the full truth and nothing but the truth. You know, it's like it's
So-
we don't have illegal immigrants. They're undocumented individuals.
We call
you
them.
know, my
We
mom
do.
was-
I have to correct you there, Scott. We do call them criminal aliens here on this show because their first act is breaking a law while coming into the law. My
That's
partner's
when
not
you
here to
come
tell
on,
you
you're
that.
passionate.
That's probably one of the.
You know, people ask me about that, and they says I'm not very fair about it. And I says, look, my mom came from South Korea. She came back with my dad when he was in Vietnam. He was stationed over there in the Air Force. She went through the full process of being educated, learning English. She does have a very thick accent, which is kind of funny. You should have her on the show sometime. But as you can tell, I don't speak Korean, unfortunately. I tried one time, said I don't know why I would do that, so there's no one other Korean to talk to. But the point is, my mom went through the process, and she went and took the test, and she's a citizen of the United States now. She didn't do it illegally, and she actually is a productive citizen to the United States and has worked very hard and contributed to the United States. She pays her taxes. She has her own house. She owns her own house, is now retired. But the point is, I'm surprised how people can sit by and say this is okay for them to come in and to use our system for insurance, our health care, our educational system, our food stamps, and so on and so forth, and think this is okay without them paying anything back. I mean, it bothers me enough to know that a lot of them even get tax returns, and a lot of people don't even know that. And it goes back to education. I can't express enough. It needs to go back in the schools. And what you talk about 9/11, it's not about terrorists anymore. It's about us. We hurt this other group's feelings, and so the only way to express it was to shove 2 planes into our towers. And unfortunately, it killed a number of Americans is because it's our fault. And I'm kind of tired of hearing it's our fault when really we've done nothing but help the world for the most part. I mean, we're not perfect people, but we've given a great example of freedom and how you can work together as a diverse group. Right now, I mean, we have things like Ferguson, as you know, coming up, and it's ridiculous. I mean, honestly, it's ridiculous. Go ahead.
We've lost our way as a nation, as a whole. Again, not all of us, not the people that pay attention, not our great listeners here on SHR Media, because I have to, kind of kowtow to them a little bit. We've lost our way as a whole as to what is truly important in this world and what is truly detrimental, and that everything else beyond that is kind of a gift. And I don't care if you're religious, non-religious, et cetera, et cetera. The fact that we have our fundamental freedoms and we have the ability to be whoever we want in this country, that can never be taken away according to our Constitution. We don't live in a country where at 15 a government agent walks in and says, "Hey, you're going to work on tanks for the rest of your life, and that's it. And you're going to get paid less than minimum wage, and you're going to work 6 days a week for 16 hours a day. And if you miss a day of work, we're going to beat you repeatedly." No, we get, hey, you're going to go to school. You have the opportunity to have an education. You can choose whatever path you want after that. And be the person that you want to be. You want to have that white picket fence in the house and the 2.5 kids and the 1.5 cars in the driveway, great. If you want to be that single guy who lives the ultimate bachelor life, absolutely. We have the freedom to be who we want to be. But with that comes the responsibility of maintaining that exact same freedom. And that's something that's where it stops. People be who they want to be, but they don't get to the responsibility portion of maintaining the freedom and making sure that that freedom is there for the next generation and the generation after that. I say it all the time. I probably will never be put into the re-education camps if we ever have them in this country, because I will probably be too old at that point. But I worry about the next generation behind me. Huh?
Right. Yes.
I said your life points would be over by then.
Yeah, exactly. Believe me, I think right now my life points would be over. It just depends on who you ask, really.
Well, I need to ask your wife at that point.
You know what? I even think my mother might be like, he's kind of getting near the end. The warranties run out and stuff's starting to go wrong, and it may just be time to junk it. I think that's it. That's kind of where it's getting. And that's fine. I know my place in life. But I think writings like yours are so important for our youth, and so important even for our adults, who haven't been shown necessarily, and like I said, a lot of it comes down to parenting. Parents are sometimes just too lazy to express to their children the importance of our freedom and our liberty and what the Constitution is and what our founding documents are. And they've become complacent and they rely on school. And we can go back, on Lyndon Johnson and all that stuff and talk about the history of why kids have to be sent to school to learn anything because parents are checked out. But at the end of the day, parents rely on schools now to turn around and educate their children both socially and education-wise. We go well beyond. Schools used to be reading, writing, arithmetic. At least they were when I was growing up. And everything else was taught at home. And your responsibility, your morals, your decency, they were all taught at home. And in my case, it was also, I had two grandfathers that were World War II. My father was in Vietnam. It was also about the freedoms of this country and the Constitution. And that is something that parents just aren't following through with now. They expect the school to teach it. Well, as well as I do, how many videos have we seen out of schools where the teacher is just teaching just pure propaganda and not sticking to any sort of true education? And that's what our kids are getting.
Honestly, I think you're misunderstanding. Because Common Core now is helping clarify those differences. And by the way you and I were raised, that'd be considered abusive today because we're now allowing our children to communicate to us clearly by texting to us, phones, to enable us to come closer to them in an emotional way to help them understand their situation. No, but you're right. But that's part of the problem is that we have gone away from home. And a lot of it is, too, is I think, as you know, statistic-wise, there's a lot of kids being raised in single homes, divorce rates up, and the moral compass that we've had in our country has gone down quite a bit. Now, whether religious or non-religious, I think people can agree that thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not lie. Those basic principles should still stand, enabling families to have a firm foundation, but people have decided they want to create their own standard and their own beliefs of which they should be able to follow. And my dad, what my dad calls that today is people's tolerance. It's basically, what are you willing to tolerate? And each person has a different tolerance level, and a lot of people want to raise that bar today. And, I mean, as you can see, concerns of different type of marriages going on today. And my dad specialized in child sexual abuse cases. He was a detective up north. And he says, you'll see one day, and he said this years ago, he says, you'll see where our morality standards, concerns of marriage will go down to where eventually we'll have polygamy, and eventually you'll see, in which most people will scoff at right now, is child love. In other words, they'll allow openly the abuse of children. And, if you've studied it throughout the world, through other countries, that is already happening right now.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's really scary, but people don't think, how could that ever happen? Well, it's easy. If you don't educate yourself, you don't keep to a certain standard, things become a very fast, slippery slope.
Well, like with the book, I was bringing up the book with Rebels to different people, and one guy told me, he goes, well, we can't teach the Bible in schools, we have to teach all this other stuff. And I'm like, first of all, I disagree with you. I think you can teach the Bible in school. There's a real basis to teach it in school. But I'm not saying that. I'm saying is you have a responsibility to teach your kids correct principles, for you to be reading that Bible every night with your kids. You need to be reading it. I mean, let me tell you, if you have children that are struggling with reading, statistically, when the Bible was in schools, we had an 80 to 90% literacy rate in America. Today, it's less than 50% proficiency, which isn't even anywhere close to what we consider a literacy rate.
Yeah.
The Bible helps kids learn to read, but, I mean, of course, it teaches them moral principles and teaches them where to look for answers, and not so much at the propaganda at schools and at, the government.
Well, and it's funny, too, because we get caught on this show, too.
Yeah.
Something
You
happened
there?
with. Here we go. I think we're back now. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I don't know. Sacco is pressing buttons over there. My engineer, he's out of control. He's had a beer and a half, so he's pretty hammered. So I'm trying to get him on like a white wine spritz or something where he can pace himself, but he goes right to the heavy stuff. But you can still have good morals and ethics that are taught at home, with or without religion. But the problem is it takes work, and it takes understanding that you have to be involved in your children's life. And like I brought up Penn Jillette. I think he's a good example of somebody who is without religion but has really good morals and understanding of our founders and our Constitution. And the fact that just because he doesn't believe doesn't mean that somebody else's rights should be taken away to believe, and or that people who do believe are crazy, which we get a lot of when you talk about atheists versus people that believe in religion. They throw out you're just crazy that there's some sky wizard who does X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, so you're 100% in every single scientist? Yeah, so science has never been wrong? No. We were supposed to be in an ice age in the Middle 80s, right?
Yeah.
Well,
the universe, they were going to build, I remember in the 90s, I think it was when I was a little girl, I remember my dad saying that they thought they were going to build a telescope that we could see the end of the universe.
Yes, I do remember that, actually.
Do you remember that?
So, yes, that is outstanding. Oh, my goodness. So you look at it and, is there always an exact answer? No. But you have to stick to what we know works. And we know in this country that morals work. But what that did is when people had morals, they weren't so easily deceived because of their morals. Well, if you want to deceive people in order to kind of get them to do your bidding, taking away their morals and replacing it with things that are essentially free and immoral is an easier solution. And, you have kids, if you put 2 vegetables down in a piece of candy, odds are, and you say, all right, you make your choice. You can have the sauerkraut cabbage, the broccoli, or the Snickers bar, and no questions asked. Which one are they going to choose? Right. I would choose the Snickers bar.
The broccoli, to be honest with you.
I'm Snickers bar
I actually, believe it or not, I'm one of those people. I like the little green balls of death. I like Brussels sprouts. I'm a lunatic. But but I also, when I cook them with bacon, and I cover them with Parmesan cheese and balsamic vinegar. So it's not really Brussels sprouts as much as bacon vegetables. It's an excuse to eat bacon, and I'm still eating my vegetables, so it's okay. But and that's what they've done. They've stopped making people kind of be responsible so they can shove the irresponsible down their throat. And then once you make them essentially drones, like, hey, you know what, I'm getting this free, that free, this free, that free, then you could turn around and start shoving other things down their throat that they may not know they don't want, but hey, why not, right? Because if the government's always been right, then this must be okay too. Obamacare is the prime example of that right now, and immigration is going to be the next example right now.
Well, it's interesting when you go back to the morals. It was Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Paine were writing letters back and forth towards kind of towards the end of Thomas Paine's life, probably obviously end of Benjamin Franklin's life too, is discussing the Bible, and Thomas Paine was arguing that we don't really need it, kind of thing. And because he had kind of gone staunchly atheist at this point. And Benjamin Franklin was like, I see your point in some of these things, but how are we going to teach the morals to the next generation? How are we going to do this? We need to still have the Bible because it has the morals in it. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a really good and interesting to hear. I mean, this argument's been going on for a long time. It's not just us. This isn't new. We're just not suddenly now we have atheists. It's been going on for a while.
Yeah, it's not like they're not hipsters all of a sudden, where they're like, hey, man, it's just not cool to believe. And you looked at the battle of religions, and, we've talked about this show. We've been battling Muslim extremists since the 1700s as a nation. And some things will never change, and we will always be fighting this battle. I think now it's more apparent to people that this battle is going on because of social media, things like this, the ability to be able to turn on a mic and talk without the FCC getting all over your junk, Twitter and all that stuff. But as wonderful as a tool as those things are, it's also extremely disruptive because of so much bad information that gets thrown out. You know, and you have so many people out there that push things as fact that have no basis for it. And I mean, you know, Judith, I saw you on Twitter all day, and I couldn't keep up with you even if I tried to save my life. But
I
it was.
How you feel.
Oh, that is a proud man who knows not to get himself in trouble. You know, but you watch what people respond to, and just the best one is pictures. And I can remember when the whole thing that was going on with the Bundy Ranch, as awful as that was and what was happening, people were exacerbating it with a lot of falsehoods on both sides through pictures. Here's a picture of the Bundy Ranch of the Bundy stampeding a thing of school children. You know, that was a picture from 30 years earlier in the 60s at the running of the bulls. Or, you know, it went back and forth. But people would just swallow that down because we've been taught not to do research, just to accept what we're given as reality. Because, you know, why would people lie to you? Why would anyone ever lie to you? Lies are just ridiculous. Nobody would ever lie to you. Everything is just fine. Just everything's A-okay. Don't sweat it. I think that's what Scott said earlier.
There's no ISIS within the United States. There's
Well, life's not dangerous.
There's no silent cells. You know.
Well,
and there's no pickles.
Yeah, and I don't know. The cake is a lie. I could keep going, but you know, it is a sad reality that we've come to, and you know, we joke about it on the show all the time because I'm a big believer. If you don't laugh at it, you're going to end up crying under the bed again. That we need to find a way where we need to get a little bit more old-fashioned. We need to get a little bit more old school. You know, take the technology out of your kid's hand. I think technology is a beautiful thing. I really do. I use it all the time. I use it on the show. I use it in my personal life. There's some great things that could be taken out of technology with education, but also it needs to be taught that it's just a tool. It's not everything. Just like government. Government is a tool. It is not everything. It is a tool to give you a certain amount of things that they must provide, and then everything else you're responsible for. You know, it's not a fix-all. There's no fix-all that way. And I think if we could start to get almost, and I hate to say regress, but if we could just get a little bit more old-fashioned. Huh?
You need to get regressive instead of progressive? Sorry.
Yes, we do. Did I just coin that phrase? I'm writing that down. Hold on, that's a bumper sticker. It's going to say, let's get regressive, baby. Let's get regressive, baby. I like it. Good call on that. I should have you coin all my catch all my intelligent phrases. But you know, little things like, and you know, this is something that my cousin does with his family now, and I think it's the most brilliant thing in the world. He has a family dinner every single Sunday, an old school family dinner, no television. They sit around the big table. They take turns hosting it between him and his sister and his parents, and they bring everyone together and sit down and just talk to each other. And just be involved in each other's life and not just check out so quick to the television or this or that. And I think that's such a brilliant idea because that's a great opportunity to teach your young ones about morals and have that conversation on top of teaching, you know, history. I know growing up for me, when we used to do that with my grandparents, everything, I heard about my grandparents in World War II. I heard about my father in Vietnam. I heard about my father was a cop as well. I heard about those stories. I'd listen to my mother's tale growing up. My mother had an amazing tale. She was adopted, and how all that worked out, and how my grandparents essentially saved her. You hear these amazing things, and you can pick opportunities out to teach morals from that as well. But that's the other thing is we rely on electronics to be our interface of communication. That you lose that time together. You lose that ability together. I mean, how many times do families sit around for Sunday dinner anymore? and spend 4 or 5 hours just talking to each other and cooking together, setting up and cleaning up afterwards, and maybe reading a couple books to the kids and the grandparents. It doesn't happen anymore. So yeah, let's get regressive, baby. I'm all for it.
Well, we recently, with our homeschooling, we told our kids that they were only going to get 3 hours of TV during the week, and they could have another 3 on the weekend. And I said, this is going to improve your education. And they're like, what? They had the worst, but it's changed everything. They were really upset about it. They don't fight. They play together nicely. The older children are teaching the younger ones. It's just amazing to me. And it's so much
involvement.
Better.
Yeah. I think it's a brilliant idea. Now, Scott, how does that impact your football watching?
Well, if Daddy's watching, then you're allowed to free TV.
So that's the free pass, right?
Well, Sean, to be honest with you, we actually canceled our cable last year.
We did. Believe it or not. We watch on the internet, and the little stick ball moves on the internet guy, runs it down with little thing.
My dad almost had a heart attack when I did that. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, you canceled your cable last year, and so you're getting regressive. You're out ahead of the curve, or behind the curve, if you will. You're getting back behind the curve.
I'm becoming aggressive, not regressive.
Folks, I only have a few minutes left to go. I do have a couple very important questions. First, where can everybody find your book besides shrmedia.com?
Okay, they can get it on Amazon. Rebels just got picked up by iBooks, so all the Rebels series should be on iBooks. So Rebels is everywhere you ever want to get a book. The Last Enchantress is strictly on Kindle, so you can only get it on Kindle. So at Amazon, which is Amazon. So
awesome.
But Rebels is also available to hard copy on Amazon if you're a hard copy reader. So.
And tell everyone your website.
ScottandJudithPowell.wordpress.com.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for joining us, Scott. Real quick question. Red Sox fan?
No, actually, believe it or not, I'm a Los Angeles Dodgers fan. I know.
All right. Well,
that was a
yeah, you said you were from Vermont. You may have meant you were from Soviet Russia. Now,
I'm a diehard Celtics fan and Boston Bruins fan for the NHL.
You're a Bees fan. All right, then you and I can sit down and have a beer. I was going to say, if that commonality was gone, and if you didn't have one redeeming factor, this was never going to happen again.
Hey, don't let Sean push you around.
You understand? You do have to understand that Massachusetts is below Vermont. Means you have to look up to us. So
you guys, and you'll understand this. You realize you're just the pathway to Montreal for 18-year-old boys in Boston, right?
That was true for a lot of my friends in Vermont. We just got there a little faster than you guys did.
I can remember 21 years old, driving through a blizzard through Vermont to get to Montreal because I had to get to St. Catherine Street.
Oh, wow.
And
that's to get maple syrup and cheese?
it was to get it. Sure, we'll call it maple syrup and cheese if you want. 7.5-hour drive through a snowstorm. It had to be done. Thank you, folks, so much for joining us. Make sure you check out the book, read the book, tell all your friends about the books, the whole series, all 4 of them. Scott and Judith Powell, you guys are outstanding. Will you come back and join us again sometime?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Folks, we're going to take a break. You're going to hear right now the Windrock Wealth Weekly Financial Update, and on the other side, we're going to catch up on the rest of the news.
Welcome to SHR Media Network's weekly market update featuring Windrock Wealth Management. Reporting for the week ended Friday, November 14th, my name is Chris Casey, Managing Director with Windrock Wealth Management, the wealth management firm with a unique macroeconomic perspective and an entrepreneurial mindset to seize on investment opportunities. Deflation has been a common theme throughout the markets recently. Crude oil is now at $76 a barrel. Oil prices across the board are off 20% year to date and around 25% since the summer. Meanwhile, both Japan and Europe are frantically expanding their respective money supplies in the wake of deflation fears. The Bank of Japan recently announced it will expand its asset purchases to the equivalent of $750 billion a year. Given the relative sizes of the Japanese and American economies, this equates to a $3 trillion quantitative easing program by the Federal Reserve. And since they are buying every Japanese government bond issued, the Bank of Japan must expand the nature of the assets it acquires. Accordingly, it is directly involved in the stock market through its acquisition of real estate investment trusts. With Abe's Liberal Democratic Party remaining popular, unlikely to win any snap election it may call, Japan's unprecedented expansion of the money supply will continue. Likewise, in Europe, the European Central Bank is seeking to inject upwards of $1.24 trillion in equivalent U.S. dollars. However, deflation is nothing to fear. It does not automatically bring about recessions or depressions. It does not mitigate economic activity. For proof, note that the U.S. economy in the 19th century, the period of its greatest economic progress, twice experienced massive deflation with prices falling by 50% over an extended period. So why are central banks so nervous about deflation? One reason is that it hurts borrowers. So central banks must inflate the money supply to generate inflation or risk additional stress on governments. Regardless as to the reason central banks pursue inflationary policies, the effect remains. Both the euro and the yen have fallen by approximately 10% against the dollar year to date. The strong dollar means gold has been declining, as investors again view dollars as a safe haven investment. But with gold at $1,185 an ounce, perhaps investors, ironically, should heed the words of Alan Greenspan, the former Federal Reserve Chairman. In speaking before the Council on Foreign Affairs a few weeks back, Mr. Greenspan was asked if he thinks gold is currently a good investment. His response? Quote, "Yes, remember what we're looking at. Gold is a currency. It is still, by all evidence, a premier currency. No fiat currency, including the dollar, can match it." This is SHR Media Network's weekly market update featuring Windrock Wealth Management.
And welcome back to the last 30 minutes here of the Sackheads Radio Show. I am your host, Sackhead Sean. Running the board better than any person on the face of the planet could possibly do is Sackhead Sacco. Sacco,
I thought you were going to say you were running the board.
No.
Okay.
No. I have no idea what I'm doing over that.
You could.
You know that. And you do a better job than most dogs could do. And I really appreciate that. Thank you. Hey, real quick. I want to jump back to Keystone because after the Keystone vote, an amazing thing happened. And I think it's, let's see, clip. Oh, Sacco, where did I put that? Clip number 1. This happened just as the vote was finalizing. There was just a bizarre outbreak. And folks, you can't make, this is the United States Senate. And this happened. Go.
My cable.
Any senator wishing to vote or wishing to change a vote? If not, on this vote, the yeas are 59, the nays are 41. The 60-vote threshold having not been achieved, the bill is not passed. Under the previous order, the Senate will proceed to executive session to consider the following nominations, which the clerk will report.
Nominations, the Judiciary. Leslie Joyce Abrams of Georgia.
Sergeant-at-Arms will restore order. Order in the gallery.
What's going on?
Saxby? Saxby. I'm going to say something.
Go ahead and cut it, Sacco. Now, the first woman, from what I was told and from what the news reports are saying, was a Muslim woman that was singing, and I don't know what she was saying. And then the second one sounded like a group of cheerleaders invaded the Senate. And I don't know if they thought a basketball game was going to break out or what, but...
Wait, this is not the game?
Yeah.
Oh, keep cheering.
Really? You finally get into the gallery at Senate to be involved, and you're going to go with, hey, Senate Democrats, what you going to do? Like, I weep for our future. I weep for our future. Couple really
I'm
big...
moving to Armenia.
I'm pretty sure they don't want you back.
Oh, my God.
What? What, Sacco? So tomorrow, the President Obama is going to talk about, or he's going to tell everyone what he's going to do with immigration and his amnesty. And he has a plan. But first, he thought he'd just kind of spice it up by releasing a little bit of a video, kind of a teaser. This is just kind of weird to me. Normally what you do is they do a press release. The president's going to be speaking at this time, blah, 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 blah. But, Sacco, if you could play video number 1, please.
Sean, this is why I run the board. It's clip 2, by the way.
Yeah, I'm close enough.
Hi, everybody.
Just play it.
Tomorrow night, I'm going to be announcing here from the White House some steps that I can take to start fixing our broken immigration system. And then on Friday, I'm going to be traveling to Del Sol High School in Las Vegas, where 2 years ago, I laid out the principles for comprehensive immigration reform. Everybody agrees that
I'm not a
our
dictator.
immigration system is broken. Unfortunately, Washington has allowed the problem to fester for too long. And so
You're
what I'm
part
going to
of
be laying
Washington
out
there,
is
Chief.
the things that I can do with my lawful authority as president to make the system work better, even as I continue to work with Congress and encourage them to get a bipartisan, comprehensive bill that can solve the entire problem. So,
Don't
tune
buy
in
it.
tomorrow night at 8 o'clock here from the White House, where I'm going to be making this announcement. And then Del Sol High School, I will see you on Friday. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, did he just do a teaser for his own immigration speech?
Yeah, I think he did, which doesn't make sense. I'm like, okay.
Didn't we do that for our election coverage? But we're a media source. His, by the way, his approval rating is down in, I think, 36%, 37% now. People pay so little attention to the president. Normally, when the president was going to speak to the nation,
Everybody was.
everybody, that's right, everybody watched. It was on all the big stations. This one will not be covered by the big stations, especially when it was something big like immigration or, you know, I remember back to the days of President Reagan. When you found out President Reagan would speak, everyone ran around the television. There was no questions asked. Even through Clinton, Bush, and now this president has to do like internet ads in order to people. It's kind of just sad. It really is.
It is.
You know, it's just like, hey guys, I know
Hope you
this
never forgot about me, but
yeah, I know I just paid all this money for a pop up on Yahoo, but I want you to really pay
Is that where you
attention
found
to me. Because I'm going to say something super important tomorrow night, and I'd really think it would be like super cool if you guys all just showed up and hung out and saw. So I thought that was sad. So yesterday, during the White House press briefing, John Carl from ABC, I believe it was talking to Josh Earnest about immigration reform that was coming up this week. And he really kind of went to town because a year ago the president was on, I think it was Telemundo, Univision, talking about...
Telemundo?
I'm not... That's what it was. Telemundo, Univision. He was talking about why he can't do certain things because Congress has to do it. He can't just pass immigration reform unilaterally. He needs Congress. Congress passes the law, and then I approve and sign it in executive as the executive and execute it. So I can't do that. I can't just sign a pen and have everything be fixed because Well, there was a midterm election coming up, so he couldn't just say that. So tomorrow he's going to do that, what he said he couldn't do a year ago. And ABC, which, folks, when mainstream media is starting to turn on this administration, it kind of gives you a good idea of how fouled up things are, because he was the media joy. He was the love and joy. He put the twinge up Chris Matthews' legs. Everybody loved this president that was in lamestream media. Now you get things like this. Clip number 3, Sacco?
Coming back to the immigration executive order that's coming, does the president still stand by what he said last year when he said, quote, "I am not the emperor of the United States. My job is to execute laws that are passed"? Is that still operative?
Absolutely.
Not a king either.
That's right.
Because he was asked very specifically about the idea of expanding the deferred action executive order for the Dreamers to their parents. And he said September 17th of last year, Telemundo, very clearly, if we start broadening that, then essentially I would be ignoring the law in a way that would make it very difficult to defend legally, so that is not an option. Is that still operative when the president said specifically that expanding the DACA executive order is not an option because it would be ignoring the law? Does he still believe that?
Well, John, I don't want to get ahead of what any sort of announcements that the president may make before the end of the year about executive actions that he may take to fix our broken immigration system. Since this interview aired, the president did direct the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security to conduct a review of the law to determine what, if any, authority he could use to try to fix some of the problems that House Republicans have refused to address. So
it's just the Republicans?
Has I was been under consideration for some time by the Attorney General of the United States and by the Secretary of Homeland
just the
Security.
Republicans.
So just to be clear, so you're saying that this is no longer operative because we've had a review. So when the president said that expanding DACA to apply to the parents of the Dreamers, for instance, would be broadening and essentially ignoring the law in a way that would be difficult to defend legally, that it's not an option, that statement is no longer operative.
Well, what I'm saying is we'll have an opportunity to evaluate the actions that the president has chosen to take after he's announced.
But I'm not asking about the options. I'm just saying, does the president still stand by what he said in that interview in September of last year?
Well, John,
just say
obviously
yes.
There are
Why
some
you
things that have changed with this. Well, it's not. Obviously, there have some things that have changed, right? We have been in a situation where the president has ordered a broader, in-depth review of the existing law to determine what sort of executive authority does rest with the presidency to determine what kinds of steps he could take on.
Now, first of all, I think it's cute. I think it's cute that, like you said, he wouldn't just come out and say it. Everything has to be a sidestep. Because you know what? If he came out and said, hey, you know what? Yeah, the president does stand by it. Now what? Well, what about this? No, he stands by it. No.
So
his executive order will be legal in the sense that our little pinhead attorneys have drug through everything we can and found every single legal loophole in the language for him to turn around and sign executive actions that accomplish X, Y, and Z.
Right.
In his case, I think it's going to be maybe X. I don't think Y and Z are covering it. And then to blame
just Republicans,
just the Republicans
because the
in
Republicans
Congress.
weren't working with us, and every Democrat was on board, and we had something in plan and in motion, and we just
right.
couldn't get
And
it
if you
done.
listen, if you listen to Ernest and you listen to the left, you would think that Congress would have at least a 50% approval rating, roughly, is what it worked out to be with the Senate and the House and the Democrats. You would have thought that they would have had a 100% approval rating when the Democrats owned both houses and the White House, the House, the Senate, and the White House. But no, reality is what it is. I think Congress's last approval rating was like 12%. Yes. Is it something that immigration should have been done a long time ago? Yeah. And they had this is the best part about it, and people forget this every time. Obama had the opportunity to have a congressional bill signed, put on his desk, that he could then approve the first 2 years of his presidency when he owned the House and the Senate and the executive branch. They had the ability to take care of it. If it was such a big deal, they would have dealt with it. But they didn't. What did we get? Obamacare. which we didn't know what was in it until we passed it, according to Nancy Pelosi, and we passed a humongous pile of dung. Why? Because at the beginning, they wanted to make sure that they secured their voter base that was already in this country. They were already here. That's what they needed for the next 2 elections. It blew them out in the midterm, but he retained the office 2 years ago. Then, once they had him in the office in 2012, it's 2014 right now, they knew they were going to lose this midterm. The numbers knew everyone knew they were going to lose this midterm. He maintained not to pass executive action because he thought that he was actually going to help some Democrats in this last election, which he was like Ebola to them. They wanted no part of it.
Get away from the virus.
But now it's time to shore up the 2016 base. How do you do that? Well, they've already rallied their home base once. They've already rallied the inner city and everything like that with Obamacare and the promise of Obamacare, and then they had to sign it to try to get people to come back and vote in midterms in 2012. Now they need to get and shore up the Hispanic vote. And how do they do that? You pass this immigration. It doesn't matter how. He's going to use executive action. He's going to do it on his own to help shore up the progressives for 2016.
Let me stop you. Do you truly think the whole reason behind
Yes.
that is for his votes?
Oh, not his, but for the Democrats.
Democratic.
Unless he does something miraculous and all of a sudden he can run for a 3rd term, which is illegal, but who knows with this guy? He may find a way to make it legal. Look at what he did with Obamacare. That was a completely illegal bill that they somehow found a way to make legal. So after they lied to us and now, called us idiots for essentially not understanding what was passed.
Well,
so
they themselves did not understand.
It is all about votes, though, Sacco. You have to understand that's all these people care about is retaining power. How to retain power as legally as possible is to buy as many votes as you can, quote unquote, as legally as you can. I'm not saying that what he's doing is going to be legal and it'll be challenged and all this other stuff and he'll be well out of office before it. But once these go into effect, once you do any sort of immigration where people that have already been here for 5+ years and they have kids here and they can stay forever, you can't undo that. You can, but it's really difficult to. So you're going to go down that road. If he said he's going to sign an executive action to have a wall built on the Rio Grande River and the southern border, and he found a way to sign that executive action because of X, Y, and Z, just insert whatever ways. He's ordering the Department of Homeland Security to build it, and he could do that because he's the executive, blah, 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 blah. The simple fact is I still would think that he would need a congressional approval. I still believe in that. I don't believe in executive actions. Executive actions were not meant to put laws in places where Congress won't pass them for you. But he uses them that way.
As a dictatorship. Basically,
essentially.
This is what I want. Here's my pen. Here's my paper.
Right.
And
he has a pen and a phone. Remember, he said that. When it came down to, we were talking about gun rights a year ago. Mm-hmm. I have a pen and a phone. The same thing's starting now with immigration. Hey, you know what? I'm going to sign whatever I can legally. Well, here's the problem. He signs those executive actions, and like I said, they get put into place almost immediately.
How come we can't get rid of the executive actions?
You have to there's a whole big process. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but there's a whole process that goes along.
I think it's a great idea.
One of the things that needs to be done is that people need to hold politicians accountable for their screwball actions. And that's not something that gets done regularly. The Constitution gets sidestepped on a regular basis. So let's look at this immigration thing that he's about to pass. If he really wants to, by the way, if you get a chance on YouTube, if you search Sheriff Scott Jones, Sacramento County Sheriff, he just released a video to the president directly. And he kind of talked about this. And a lot of people don't know, Sheriff Jones is a pretty staunch conservative, huge gun rights guy. Once he got it, the former sheriff would not issue CCWs to anyone. His first real action when he got elected sheriff is start issuing CCWs. Lifelong peace officer in California, really good guy. Essentially, he said to the president, I need you tomorrow, right away, to start acting on immigration. And not as it got turned, and a lot of the local media is spinning it like he's calling for him to do this unilateral executive action immigration reform. But what he was saying is you got to get both houses together, the House and the Senate together, and pass this, get this done. You could also restore the power that you've taken away from Border Patrol. They're not enforcing half the laws on the border right now. He's chosen not to. He did it 2.5, 3 years ago now. He's taken the power away from Border Patrol where people used to be officially deported. Now we bust them all over the country to be, for the time being, because he's about to pass this in. We bust people from Texas, Sacco, to New York for free.
Oh
right?
my God.
That's his
If you're in
idea.
a boat and the boat has a hole, has a leak,
yeah.
Do you A, patch that hole?
No,
or
no.
B,
You just
rip it open
no.
and let it more water
You just
come in?
absolutely no. You take a sledgehammer to that hole. The only way to fix that hole is with the sledgehammer, and that's what he's going to do. He's going to take his sledgehammer tomorrow.
He was thirsty. That's why he wanted it.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to take his sledgehammer tomorrow and make that hole bigger. And people on the left are going to go crazy and revere him as some sort of hero of the small people, and call those of us who oppose it racist and those who hate immigrants and blah, blah. I'm the grandson of an immigrant. I understand. I'm a grandson of a legal immigrant. There's a lot of legal immigrants who are here. They may not be citizens yet. Some, obviously some are, because that's the country we're made of. But they're working towards it. They came here legally. They went through the process. And all you're saying to those people who are coming to live the American dream, who put all that work and effort to come from whatever country it is, even Mexico, one of the most lawless nations on the face of the planet that we kowtow to constantly, or our administration does, you are going to take all those people that did everything the right way and say, hey, you know what? That's all well and good. These people cross the border at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're pretty much going to get the same thing you did by working. And so if you're a new immigrant to the country and you did everything the right way, let's say you came here from Armenia.
Okay.
And you did everything the right way. And you're here and
Which
you're
my
going
dad
through
did.
Right. Yeah. And you're going through the citizenship classes and you're working, you're going through your citizenship classes. You're doing everything right because this is the land of opportunity. And then all of a sudden you find out how many people, all of a sudden the president signs this order, bump. And now all those illegals that did it illegally, they came over the border, criminal aliens, they sidestepped the system, they've maybe gotten welfare that they didn't deserve and benefits they don't deserve, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Why would you continue on the path the right way? Some of it's personal integrity.
Yeah, integrity and my own morals.
But think about what a slap that to the face that is to all of those hardworking immigrants that are trying to get to this country legally. Think about what an insult it is to those folks. And really, our country's built on immigrants, and I understand that. And that's why I think we need to worry about those who are coming here legally to live the actual American dream and not the American welfare nightmare that a lot of them who are coming through the southern border take control of. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago, the 2 peace officers that were just killed in the Sacramento area, Placer County and Sacramento. A legal alien, deported 4 times, felon, should not have possessed a firearm. And that's just one person who he shot an innocent victim in the face. He shot other deputies. He shouldn't have been in this country. The Border Patrol agents should have been, and immigration should have been allowed to enforce the law the way it was intended, and he never should have been allowed back.
Well,
but that didn't happen. And it didn't happen as a direct result, and some people are afraid to say this, but a direct result of this president's action and otherwise inaction. And I blame Congress too. Congress has publicized and politicized this immigration reform to try to win elections versus doing what is right for this country. Everything has been about politics, and that's the sad path that we're down in this country. Everything's political. We need to start doing what's right for us as a nation. And I can tell you tomorrow, it's not going to be what's right for us as a nation. And once he signs it, like I said, undoing the damage that he's doing through appeals and court procedures and all that stuff, it's going to be too late.
Let me ask you, if you're up for president the next run, do you want to take presidency Like,
no. No, I wouldn't want that job to save my life. Seriously, absolutely not. It takes a very, very specific person to do that job.
If we had, honestly, if the American people turned around and said, hey, you know what? We don't care about anybody on the ballot. We're going to pick a random American Joe. Go.
I think we'd do better.
There, we would do amazing.
You know what? I think if we picked some small businessman in the middle of Ohio who is just working as hard as he possibly can to try to make what's best for his family, if we picked that person, I think we would be better off than some high-end politician.
There's no corruption to this guy?
Well, right. He's just trying to make
personal moral
and
beliefs
he sees shortcomings. He
then
sees shortcomings in big government actions, all that stuff. And Clinton and I get into this argument all the time. I would rather a person like that whose soul and spirit is clear and their intentions is just to make the country better.
Yeah.
Everyone talked about
Their
this president.
business is the country.
He's the people's president, and this, that, and the other thing. They ignore the millions of dollars he's made since he's been in office. How much money. He talks about the plight of the middle class and how people are poor and the Republicans don't do this and that. This guy is a millionaire, well above his just regular presidential paycheck now than he ever was, and he's going to be set for life, stepping on the middle class, illegal immigrants, and the poor inner city kids. He has touted them out time and again to benefit himself and the progressive left. Look at Sandy Hook. I talk about this all the time. All those kids he brought on stage when he started signing executive actions. He was standing on the graves of those dead kids to try to push an agenda. It was within a week? That is what's wrong with politics. That is what's wrong with our government. And that's what's wrong with our people today. And it's sad, and it needs to change. And we as a nation, if we don't change it, we're going to go down a path that we can't possibly recover from.
Well, we're already on that path. I'll just.
Oh yeah, no, we are on the fast train to Screwsville, folks.
Canada sounds good at this point.
I think we're on that new Japanese train that goes 300 miles an hour right down to Screwsville. Folks, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us, Sacco. You did an outstanding job, Putty. I appreciate you filling in.
You just call me Putty?
Yeah, every once in a while. You're going back in the cage,
Hey,
brother.
Plato.
No. Get back in that cage, dude. You hit that music button in a minute, and you're done. Clint will be back next week. I'll be back next week at the same time. Thank you so very much to the Powells for joining us this evening. Check out their book. Make sure you check it out, please, and tell them the Sackheads sent you the John Bates series, Rebels, Rebellion, and the Revolution. We'll see you next week here on the Sackheads Radio Show. Thank you.
Thank you.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Hack news. Hack news.
Radio.
Hack news. Hack news.
Radio. The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.